Detroit Conference is no more, but now we're the Northern New England Conference, and we're still plugging away as best we can. I'm really grateful to you all for being here for this march. I want to say a couple of logistical things before I get to anything else. I'm spending a lot of time tonight out in various places. There's gatherings all over town, over at Howard University. As soon as I'm done with my fellow Methodists, I'm off to Georgetown to have to talk to the Catholics. So, you know, the basic message is the same everywhere we're going. Tomorrow is going to set a new heat record for the date in Washington, D.C. We're headed to 92 degrees. The weather is on message and cooperating. But we do not need that point underscored by a lot of heat stroke and so on. So make sure that you come with water aplenty. I think that some of the organizers of this thing are not the biggest fans of like plastic water bottles and stuff, so make sure you bring some water with you as you're coming, okay? And make sure you've got hat and whatever else. And don't worry about sticking out the entire afternoon. You know, a lot of it'll be, you know, the young ones will be going into the, you know, wait through the afternoon on all kinds of stuff, but the big action will be over by about 2 or so, I think, when we surround the White House for a little while and everybody sits down and we make our point. And so, and we want all of you in the big pictures. They don't let, for good reasons, I'm sure, they do not let drones fly in DC to take pictures, but apparently we've contracted with the best kite photographer. So we got to look up and say hi when you see the kite overhead. Look, there's a certain emergency quality to this gathering, I got to admit. It comes after the 3 hottest years that we've ever recorded on this planet. We just got the numbers for March. It was the warmest month on Earth that wasn't in the middle of an El Nino that we've ever recorded. Sea ice in the Arctic and the Antarctic is at a record low and melting fast. Our brothers and sisters in Pakistan, where it's often hot, just smashed yesterday all the records for heat, early heat. It's 122 degrees across much of Pakistan. So when you're out there in 92 degrees heat tomorrow, think about what it would feel like if you added 30 degrees to the total, okay? Up in Siberia, the big annual forest fires that have happened for the last 3 or 4 years began this year in April, in earnest, about a week ago. It's not too much to say at this point that we are pretty clearly running Genesis 1 in reverse, that we're engaged in a powerful act of decreation all around the planet. We can see it in every species you want to name. The scientists told us last fall that 60%, there are 60% fewer animals on the planet than there were 40 years ago. Not species, total number of animals. Think about that for a minute. Think about, I know you all are always thinking about our brothers and sisters who are taking the brunt of all of this, because the devilish thing about climate change is the way that it follows a kind of perfect inverse law. The less of the trouble you caused, the more the trouble you feel, and the sooner. The drought that's spreading out from Somalia now, which the Times, in a front page story 2 weeks ago, said both that it was caused by human changes in the climate and that it represented probably the greatest humanitarian disaster since the end of World War II. given all that's happened since the end of World War II, that's a pretty big humanitarian disaster. That kind of thing now is happening everywhere. This time I was looking back at my calendar, and this week last year, I was with our 350 crew in the South Pacific. And while we were there, the big wave of warm water swept across the Pacific, and in the course of a couple of weeks, wiped out some astonishing percentage, 50, 60, 70% of the coral reefs across that region, just in the course of a few weeks. The Great Barrier Reef, the biggest living structure on the planet, is, depending how you measure it, no longer living all that well. Vast parts of it now turned to just white bone. And that's a kind of emblematic thing, you know. It represents kind of scraping out one of the most vivid and charming corners of God's brain, you know. Just like that, a whole astonishing ecosystem gone. There's something like 500 million people in the world who depend on coral reefs for a large part of their food supply, and in many cases to provide the buffer against ocean waves that would otherwise overwhelm small islands. Okay? And it's really amazing to be on those Pacific islands, which, by the way, are almost all Christian. Lots of Methodists, lots of everybody else there. Church is an amazing thing. They're fighting as hard as they can. They're some of our best activists all over the world. Their slogan is, "We're not drowning, we're fighting." But they can't, I was thinking last night, we did a big action around the world a couple of years ago. We had about 3,000 simultaneous demonstrations in places that were already feeling the effects of climate change, you know. And there was a demonstration in a town in Haiti called Lake K, a city on the southwest peninsula there. And I remembered it because this was 3 years ago, there were a couple of young people just holding signs, homemade signs that said, "Your actions affect us." Okay? That was true then, and it's even more true now. Lake K, that city, disappeared more or less last year. That hurricane that came up through Florida, sort of brushed Florida and hit North Carolina fairly hard with kind of record flooding. Well, before it got there, coming across the hottest water ever measured in that part of the Caribbean, it obliterated. 80% of the houses in that city, buildings in that city, went down. I have no idea if the kids in that picture are still alive, because a lot of people died there. Your actions affect us, but not vice versa. There's not a thing that people in Haiti can really do to change the outcome of this story, besides reach out to us in some kind of appeal for solidarity. They can't burn less fossil fuel because they're not burning much now. They can't divest their portfolios because, you know, the pension fund of a moderate-sized UMC conference is larger than all the investment capital that there is in the whole country of Haiti. They can't do what you guys, thank heaven, have done and get on the bus and come to protest outside the most important, powerful building in the planet. So when you're there tomorrow, think a little bit about the work that you're doing on behalf of others, and know that they're looking and appreciating and giving great thanks all over the world for your witness. That's going to be beautiful tomorrow. You're going to be I was at the art warehouse today. This has been one of the things we've long believed at 350 is that it's important, yes, to appeal to whatever hemisphere of the brain it is that likes facts and data and reason. I mean, we're named for a scientific data point, 350 parts per million. But environmentalists have probably done a better job reaching the part of our brain that likes bar graphs and pie charts, and less the part that responds to the deepest signals, the signals that come through art and music and prayer. There'll be some beautiful artwork there. And it'll emphasize the fact that frontline communities are really in the lead now in this fight. It'll be so exciting for all of us. Last night, outside the Trump Hotel, there was our indigenous brothers and sisters did a round dance all around the hotel. It was a great spectacle, immensely. Look, indigenous people are absolute leaders in this fight. We saw this, people really saw it for the first time close up at Standing Rock in the Dakotas in this valiant effort to stop this pipeline. But it didn't surprise me a bit because the people that we've worked with, the people who've been in the lead on things like the Keystone fight and stuff for years had been in large part indigenous Americans. This is a profoundly diverse and multiracial city, and that'll be reflected tomorrow, and increasingly a powerful, multiracial, diverse movement. We had a wonderful, wonderful gathering last night at the headquarters of the Hip Hop Caucus. One of my absolute favorite, the group that I work with probably as close as any in the country, Reverend Lennox Yearwood, who's a Church of God in Christ minister, and lots of hip hop artists, and Dr. Beverly Wright, an old friend of mine from New Orleans, who's just an absolute pioneer of the environmental justice movement. She's tonight at Howard with Dr. Robert Bullard, another one of those pioneers of the environmental justice movement. It's amazing and appropriate to see all those forces at the absolute head of this march tomorrow. In fact, one of my jobs in the morning will be talking with all the kind of senators and movie stars and things and explaining why they're not going to be like numbered at the absolute first rank of they're a little further back in the line and so on. Of course, they have a huge part to play, and those are things to be hopeful about. I was up on Capitol Hill yesterday morning with Senator Merkley from Oregon and with my senator, Mr. Sanders, and they introduced a really powerful piece of legislation that finally just lays it on the line and says that it would mandate that we move fast toward 100% renewable energy in this country. Now, you know, we've been, even with Democrats and progressives, been straddling the line for years. We'll do some solar panels, but some fracking wells, and we'll do some windmills, but some coal mines, and we'll do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Time has run out for any of that. That bill's obviously not going to pass the Congress anytime soon, and Donald Trump has no interest in it. But when adults next take control of this country, we need no more shilly-shallying around. We actually need to go absolutely to work at the pace that this crisis demands. And of course, that's possible for us to do because some people have really done their jobs. Scientists did their job in giving us the warnings that we needed, though we didn't heed them anywhere near as well as we should have. And the engineers have done their job. The price of a solar panel's fallen 80% in the last 10 years. That gives us the margin we need if we want to take it. And you can tell because a few places around the world have taken it and shown what can be done. The Danes generated 50% of their power from the wind last year. Either that's because the crafty Danes have figured out how to steal the world's wind supply, or it's because they took the technology that everybody had and got to work on it. Okay? Now, it's funny, I'm coming down on the train the day before yesterday, someone from the religious news service interviewed me and for a story that she was writing. And she said, doesn't it bother you that a lot of scientists are skeptical about faith and things? And I said, not particularly. It doesn't bother me when anyone's skeptical about anything. It doesn't. What bothers me is when people who say that they are full of faith don't demonstrate in their actions that that's the case. It bothers me when we do not divest our pension funds from fossil fuel. And by the way, those of you who've been fighting that good fight, don't lose heart even for a minute. We had great news earlier this week on Wednesday when Harvard let slip that it had divested from fossil fuel. They'll never actually say the words, but the head of their investment machine, I mean, they have a $30 billion investment portfolio, said that they paused all their investing in fossil fuel and they plan never to resume. That was good enough for me. And it was a great tribute to the kids who had worked for 6 years. The first email I wrote was to a young woman who I knew when she was still in high school applying for college. She got into Harvard, and she went there, and for 4 years she worked every day. I mean, she got arrested sitting in she got all the rest of us engaged. I spent several nights sleeping in the shrubbery outside the president's and now they've done it. That's a good sign. And if godless Harvard can do it, then the rest of us can get down to work on all these fronts. The reason that it's so important that y'all are here and that you take this message from this march back is because we're past the point when we can win this thing in individual actions. Obviously important that all of us in our own lives act responsibly, and it's important that our congregations and our church buildings and everything else be as efficient and whatever as they can, and it's awfully good to see churches with solar panels on the roof, and that's as it should be, but you can't make the math work that way anymore. The only chance we have at this point, once the ice caps have begun to melt, once the oceans have begun to rise in serious earnest, the only chance we have is for individuals to be less individual, to come together in the kind of movements that have transformed policy and politics in the past and can do it again. We don't know. We do not know if we can do it fast enough. This is the first time. It's not the one thing that makes it different from the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, and the gay rights movement, and all the other advances that we've seen. The one thing that makes it different is this has an absolute time limit. Dr. King always used to say, and I think he was quoting from Theodore Parker, the Massachusetts Congregationalist minister and abolitionist. He always used to say the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. This may take a while, but we're going to win. Okay? It is taken far too long, and that fight is still ongoing, but there's reason to keep hope. By contrast, the arc of the physical universe is short, and it bends toward heat. And if we do not win fast, then we do not win. And that's why it's so urgent. And you know, that's why we're so grateful that you all are here, and more grateful still that you will go back home afterwards and organize the heck out of your towns, your congregations, your states. You'll do the work necessary because this is the challenge of our time. Every time has challenges, you know. It was in our parents' and grandparents' time that the challenge was fascism in Europe, and people had to go lay down their lives in very large numbers to meet that challenge. Okay? We don't have to get killed, and we don't have to thank God kill anybody. Just the opposite. If we do our job right, it will be a solid strike on the side of life and of hope and of love. But we have to work with the same kind of commitment, the same kind of all-in spirit. We do not know that we're going to win. But we do know that there's going to be a fight. Every place around the world now, people are fighting. And just know that in every corner of this planet tonight, there are people in basements talking about this same question, planning, working, doing what they can, country after country after country. I got off the phone yesterday with the start of this huge global divestment mobilization that's bringing that fight to every part of the developing world, all over the place. I leave on 2 days for Ghana and the Ivory Coast, and where people are doing miraculous things with small-scale solar now, where the lights are turning on for the first time, and they're turning on in clean fashion, and it's beautiful to see. So there's going to be a fight. We don't know if it happens in time. The great pleasure of getting to talk to you all is that unlike many of the groups I get to talk to, people of faith are allowed I want to say this carefully, they're allowed the chance to think that if we do everything we can do, then the world will meet us halfway. That there are forces at work in this world that we can count on. But only if we do our part, only if we do everything that we can do. Faith cannot be an excuse for inaction. It has to be a spur to the greatest possible action that we can imagine. And I know that y'all are completely there because here you are, ready to go tomorrow. Please have a good time. Please stay safe as you can. And make sure that you don't get too hot, because the thing that we're talking about is what happens when it gets too hot on a planet, okay? And it's serious when it gets too hot, so wear a hat and don't overdo yourself. And make sure that you enjoy, and enjoy especially just seeing all the young people out from all over who are ready to take up this fight. They're actually leading the fight most of the time in most of the places and doing most of the work. But boy, it's good for them to see elders acting the way that elders are supposed to act in a working society too. So those of you who are elders like me, thank you for being here and carrying on this fight too. I'll stop now, and I've got to go to Georgetown in a minute, but if people have questions, JD, is that okay? I'm happy to take them, but mostly I just want to say thank you so much for being here. It really matters.
Questions?
Hey, Bill?
Yes, yes.
I've only seen half of you, all my I've only seen the whole part of it. Bill, what's one of the things that you've seen in the world that makes you the most excited, that gets you the most optimistic about it?
Right at the moment, I'm very excited by what's going on in the developing world. One of the things to realize is that the fossil fuel revolution, which changed everything about our world 200 years ago, has basically bypassed huge sections of the world. There's still a couple of billion people who've never flicked on a light switch in their life, okay? And to the extent that they have any power at all, it comes from spending 50 cents or 60 cents a day to buy kerosene. Some of you have been on mission trips have seen this in place after place. You have a little kerosene, you might have a paraffin candle or a little kerosene lantern, okay, which takes a significant part of your income, and that's it, that one little light. So what people have figured out in the last few years is how to take that 60 cents a day or whatever it is and make it enough on a payment plan to get a solar panel and a little inverter, and then a couple of light bulbs, something to charge your cell phone into, because everyone on this planet now has a cell phone, no matter what else they have. That's the most widespread thing on Earth. And maybe a radio, and maybe even if you get 2 solar panels, a small TV, okay, or something like that. And it's astonishing to be in places where all of a sudden people can study after the sun goes down, you know, where people can begin small businesses, that kind of thing, just with that little increment of power, and that they can afford to do it. It's beautiful to see that marriage of human ingenuity and, I mean, half the ingenuity was figuring out how to finance things, you know. You put a little chip in the solar panel, And as long as you make your payment every month, the solar panel stays on, and if you can't for a little while, they turn it off, and when you get some more money, they turn it back on, and that's how they're able to pay for it, blow it up. Well, these things are exploding. We think that Bangladesh will be pretty much fully electrified by 2021, 2022, something like that. I remember being in Bangladesh 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and I saw the very first solar panel in the country, okay? And now they are everywhere. That's the exciting thing. The depressing thing is if you're in an airplane and you fly into any American city and you don't see any of them at all. You know, you just see the occasional, you see more swimming pools than you do solar panels in people's backyards. And it's not like going to take 30% of anybody's income here to do this, you know. It doesn't cost more than it costs to pay the cable TV bill or whatever it is. But we have to get on it, and we have to get the kind of public policy that makes it possible, especially for people with lower income, to afford this. And then we need to be doing it. It needs to be the kind of thing that everyone does. And that you feel bad about not doing it, you don't have, that's what communities look like, that's the given, the assumption. So I'm excited about that. That makes me very happy because power is a good thing, you know? To have some energy is a really good thing. And to have it and be able to leapfrog right over the coal plant, to go from no power to clean power is a remarkable thing. And so good on that.
One more question from a woman under 40.
My question is, besides going to the march tomorrow, obviously, what would be the most important thing that we all do in our lives?
Where do you live?
I live in D.C.
Okay. So it's a very, I ask because it depends sort of where you are. I mean, so really, the march like this is just a good excuse for everyone to come together. We need to show each other that there are a lot of us, okay? That's important because one of the problems with climate change always is that it seems so big and we seem so small that we need to remind ourselves that there's a plausible supply of people capable of shifting things, okay? The other is to demonstrate to the world that, to show Donald Trump and everybody else that what they're doing is not going unnoticed, all right? So that's important. But most of the work gets done back wherever we're from, with all the local fights that are underway. I think in many places, the most important ones at the moment have to do with keeping fossil fuel in the ground, okay? The spate of work that started with the fight over the Keystone Pipeline and now extends to every pipeline, every frac well, every coal port. All those things are getting fought and fought effectively. We do not win every fight, but we win a lot of them. It's amazing to me how many of them we now win because people told us we could never win any of them a few years ago. We've kept Shell from drilling in the Arctic. You know, I talked today with our crew in Australia, confident that they're going to be able to block plans for the largest coal mine on the planet. You know, there are pipelines across this continent that people have managed to slow down and shut down. That work's really important. We can't get a carbon tax through Congress at the moment, but we can impose a de facto carbon tax with our bodies in a sense, you know, in that work. So keeping it in the ground, starving the fossil fuel industry of the financial stuff that it needs. So divestment is proven to be an extremely important, powerful tool, place after place after place, especially because most people don't actually live right near a coal mine or a pipeline or a frac well, but everybody has some association of some kind that's near a big pot of money, okay? And surely the church is a good example of that, but your alma mater, your state pension fund, your whatever it is. So there's a fight in, you know, DC is one of the places where people are working around those divestment questions. Okay? And the third big area of things is the rapid promotion of renewable energy. There are a lot of states in this country where one of the reasons we're not seeing people people put up renewable energy is because the utilities and their kind of captured regulators, the public utility companies, have made it extremely difficult. I don't know if there's anybody here from Arizona, for instance, but the Public Utility Commission in the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, where the Phoenix Suns and the Arizona Sun Devils and everybody else play, in Arizona, the Utility Commission is you have to pay a $50, $60 a month fee forever in order to be allowed to have solar panels on your roof, okay? In a just blatant effort to keep people from doing it. And one way to just think about that, I'm not a theologian, okay? I barely made it to Sunday school teacher, and only in the kind of backwards, I live deep in the woods, only in the kind of church where to be a Sunday school teacher, the only qualification is, can you tie a tea towel around the head of a fourth grader and make them into a Palestinian shepherd? But I'm enough of a theologian to know that there's something really sinful about just wasting all the sun and all the wind that the good Lord has seen fit to provide us every day. We're going to be out there tomorrow baking in the sun, okay? And as you're baking, remind yourselves that every one of those rays of sun that's coming down there is capable of doing all kinds of magic here and around the world if only we put it to use. So I'd say those are the biggest tasks. And you have to do them they all require joining with other people. If you have some time and energy and money left over after that, then by all means, change your light bulbs, fix up your house, do all that comes last. The work we need to do together to change policy comes first, because it's the only thing that can work at the scale that we've got to work at now. So it's a very good question, and I'm really grateful for it.
Thank you, Bill.
I just wondered, Bill, we're about to head off to worship, and we're going to be lifting all these things in prayer, but I wondered, could we pray for anything for you right now?
I'd be very grateful if people in their prayers tonight would just, I feel a little responsibility always about being one of the voices that calls a lot of people to come together in some place. And so if people could just pray hard for the safety of everybody who will be out there tomorrow, and for everybody to keep their wits about them and stay in a peaceful and happy and loving place, that would be really powerful. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
I will ask the kitchen folks to bring dessert upstairs while we're worshiping, so you won't lose out on dessert, but if you can move quickly so we can worship as planned.